New Year off on a good note because we are starting early for the first time probably in history. So thank you, Retina team, for finishing a little early. So we have a really great grand rounds this morning. I think this is early on in our academic year, and so this is going to be one of our first ones, and I think this is going to be an excellent start. So we have two speakers today. We have Dr. Stephen Johnson. He is an associate professor in the Department of Psychiatry here at UK. He also has an appointment in the College of Social Work. He did his undergrad at Tennessee Tech, where he earned a BS in Technical Communications and then a master's and doctorate both in social work here at UK. He's the director of psychotherapy and psychological service in the Department of Psychiatry. He sees patients for mental health and substance abuse issues, but he also teaches the residents and graduate students in mental health and psychotherapy techniques. And he's the coordinator of mental health services for the Bluegrass Care Clinic at UK. So clearly very busy and highly educated. Edie Sutter is a Nashville and Middle Tennessee native. She attended Tennessee Tech as well and majored in English and journalism, then spent the next decade in Nashville working in development, marketing, and editing, and finally found her great love teaching. Marriage and motherhood followed that, immersion in volunteer work, community service, and an irreverent cooking show.
Yeah.
If you feel free to share if you want to.
Disaster.
Currently lives in Eastern Tennessee, where she's a licensed mediator and advocate for conflict resolution. So please join me in welcoming both.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for having us. I don't know, this is going to be a little bit unconventional grand rounds. We're going to try to do something a little different for you other than 97 slides with text. So hopefully it'll be a refreshing change. Edie and I actually met at Tennessee Tech. I was in a fraternity there and she was my fraternity sweetheart. So she's been my sweetheart for 38 years now. And we've been good friends. We're going to talk today about flexing our failure muscle, which is not something maybe you hear about in medical school or in training, but I think it's a very valuable topic. So before we get started, I want everybody to think about your biggest mistake that you've made as a physician. What's your biggest blunder, whether people knew about it or didn't know about it? What's your near miss or the biggest mistake? And I would like, we're going to start in the back of the room. And if you just stand up and tell us what your biggest mistake was, go ahead, whoever wants to go. No. Anybody up here want to start then? No, we don't do that, do we? We don't talk about those things. Those are things that may not be mentioned, but that's maybe part of the problem. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So let me share before we get going, let me share some slides with you if I can. I don't have anything to disclose. We have a few objectives there that we do for grand rounds, but here's what I want you to see. So that's a lot of information to throw at you at 8 o'clock in the morning. And it's not something that's very uplifting, but clearly you can see there's a problem. We have a problem here that is fairly significant. And, there's a lot of reasons probably for the facts that you just saw, and you probably, as you look at those facts, can sort of in your own mind think about why that is the case. When I think about it, here's some of the things that pop to my mind is there's a stigma associated still with mental health and getting help. Just that word getting help seems to imply that you're less than, or that there's something wrong, or that you're not measuring up to what you need to be. You're not functioning as you should function. So we have that already put as a stigma before you even begin to think about reaching out to someone. Insomnia and sleep, we'll talk about that a little bit more specifically. And there's this, sometimes I think all of you in this room went into medicine because of, for probably a couple of reasons, but one, you wanted to help people, and two, you were driven to be successful. And somewhere along the training route for a lot of people in medical school or in training, there's sort of a switch that happens between, it's no longer a drive for success, but there's also a fear of failure. And we don't do a good job as educators making sure that doesn't happen. And it may just be endemic to what's going on, but I think if it's a thing, we need to figure out how we can make sure that doesn't happen. And then I was talking with a resident in another department, not in psychiatry, but in another department, and he was talking about shame-based learning, and saying, when he's on rounds with his attending, a particular attending would say, now what questions do you have? And he said, Steve, I would be petrified that I'm going to ask a stupid question. So it's not just even, I don't know the answers, but if I do have a question, it has to be a good question. It can't be something that I should have read and should already know. It's got to be something that is an exciting and unique question, because if I don't ask a good question, then I'm going to be embarrassed. He said, so it's kind of this shame-based learning sometimes that happens. Yeah.
If you think if a faculty member says, what questions do you have? It's probably not a shame-based learning situation.
Well, he didn't feel it that was that way, but I think that was maybe attending specific to that particular individual. Like for him, it felt like a trap, right? So I know a lot of attendings, that's not the case, and hopefully that's a genuine question. But I think it was more just in this realm of, I don't even know if I can ask a question if it's not a good question. All right. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We do have some medical students, I think, but as a medical student, I would imagine it's not necessarily even just shame-based, but it's fear-based, because you want to ask a good question to get a good review. So it's all about the evaluations.
Right. Right. So there's that huge component as well. Very good point. So at this point, I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to let Edie talk just a little bit about her situation and her husband.
Okay. My husband was an interventional radiologist. He trained for 9 years at Vanderbilt, undergrad at Notre Dame, really sharp, obviously, like every single person sitting in this room. I would, in fact, say brilliant. I consider all of you brilliant. I saw the time and the work that went in, and I was constantly blown away. But he practiced for 24 years, never missed a day of work, was never late a day to work, was really good at what he did. In our little town, they called him Superman, and they called him Atticus Finch of medicine, because he was this sweet, humble, solid guy. Always there, always taking other people's shifts so they could be home with their babies. He was just solid. And I'm sorry, my heart just always, when I start this talk. But he was, after 24 years, he was named in a lawsuit. He walked in the kitchen one day and he said, it's happened. I've been named in a lawsuit. And I went, okay, what do we do? And he said, I've already met with the Tennessee Board of Malpractice. They gave me this pamphlet to read. You get a pamphlet. And it suggests that you get counseling. You need to talk to someone because this is going to be a really hard time. So what did he do? Physicians, how do they heal themselves? He wadded the pamphlet up. He said, I got this. I'm going to start running again. And I'm going to really eat healthy. And I'm going to make sure I'm well rested. And I'm going to get through this. And I went, okay, great. What can I do? And he said, well, here's the deal. The attorney said, you are the only human being on this earth other than him that I can talk to about this. None of my partners, none of my friends, anyone else would be compromised. You're it. And I said, okay. And he said, I'm so sorry. I don't want our lives to just be this conversation, but it's going to kind of be. Oh, and P.S., this is going to go on for 5 to 7 years. That's how long a lawsuit will take. So, you know, we're reeling. And I said, okay, so tell me about the lawsuit. So it was someone had come into the ER. He had seen her very quickly for a kidney situation. He had seen a lot of disease in her lungs and written on her chart, you need to get to a pulmonologist also. You got, this is going on, but you got this too. End of it. 7 years later, she filed the lawsuit. He doesn't even remember the case. This was a 5-minute exchange with somebody. So it starts rolling. It starts going. So 7 months into it, and there is such a perfect storm of events that occurs, but he can't talk to his friends, and doctors are rule followers. So when he was told, you can't talk to anyone but your wife, he didn't. No friends, no partners, no one. And I watch the sparkle, and he was an incredibly sparkly person, twinkly. It just went away. And as it progressed, 7 months in, he quit sleeping. And when I say quit sleeping, 5 nights, he never could close his eyes. He walked in to do a spinal tap. Panic attack occurred. He walked out. He called 13 counselors to go talk to someone. No one could take him. He called the suicide hotline and they said, have you made an attempt on your life? He said, no. And they said, well, we can't do anything then until you do that. Okay. Another night of no sleep. And he said, I think I'm losing my mind. Of course, you know, this is how you torture soldiers, no sleep. So he starts misfiring. And the next morning he said, I need you to take me to Vanderbilt. I need to be hooked up to an IV. I need to sleep for 24 hours so I can handle this. And he went, and again, this is where he had trained for 9 years. So if you can imagine walking back into the hospital where you have trained and basically saying, I have come undone, the humiliation and the brokenness of that. And they said, you're going to have to go to psychiatric hospital. And so he walked in the lobby there, and it's a room this big, and they call his name across the lobby, his full name. And he walks in, and they strip him of, you know, belt and shoelaces. And they put him in a room with a man with very advanced dementia. He flicks the light on and off all night. And anyway, he gets no sleep. 3 days after that, he takes his life from truly the mental problems that occurred after not sleeping. 2 weeks after he took his life, Tennessee Malpractice Board said, there's no case here, we're dropping it 2 weeks after. So I went back to Vanderbilt after all of this, and they thought I was coming to file a lawsuit. And I said, no, I just want us to think about how could we do this better, because this was such a failure for one of your own. And okay, Steve, who has known Bill and has known me since I was 18, who has taught medical students, he said, oh my gosh, I've been teaching all of this incorrectly. If this happened to Bill, I got to rethink everything I'm saying to doctors and medical students. So what we realized, the point that was the breaking point is, he said, Bill kept saying, I just need to talk to my colleagues. I need to talk to someone else that this has happened to. We're meant to talk things like that out. And of course, I was saying, there's no case here. I looked at the file, you know, I was reading through the case. There was no case. I said, you're going to be fine. He said, I can't hear that from you. I've got to talk to my colleagues. So there is a horrible breakdown that occurs if you're named in a lawsuit. And I think why we come to speak is to just say, there are many other things that need to be said to all of you and that you need to have in place, because you may never get named in a lawsuit in your whole career. Please, I hope you don't. He went 25 years, golden. But if it happens, you're not really well taken care of. And what you have worked your entire life for seems destroyed. I was saying to Bill, just quit medicine. Let's just sell the house, get a condo, move, go be a teacher. You'd be great. And he went, I don't even know what you're saying to me. I mean, he said, I don't know how to leave medicine. What do you, and I said, just, and he couldn't do it. And I realized it was really his identity, especially after, what did y'all put in, 34 years of education or whatever. So we want to see you get together a team of peers who can't be touched, who are almost your AA program of lawsuit. Someone you can call at 3 in the morning if you need to when the panic attack starts. If you're going to be deposed the next day, who can I talk to? Who are safe people in the medical group that I can call and hash this out with? And then Steve, what he does, obviously, finding counselors. In the last 7 years since this happened, Bill called 13 counselors and they all said, we can see you in 2 months. And now there's the online counseling, right? That you said is immediate.
Yeah, that's the great thing about COVID now, is there's so many more resources, and particularly for like you guys that are anonymous. But you know, there's so many ways now to get in touch with somebody and have somebody to talk to. So that is an improvement for sure.
Another friend of mine's a counselor, and she said even Jesus needed 12 people to talk to. You know, everybody's got to have somebody to talk it out with. And unfortunately, he was assigned a jerk of a malpractice lawyer. And he didn't think he could ask to be assigned another one. This guy would call at 9 o'clock at night and go, man, they've got the best expert witnesses. Ugh, I don't even know if I can find anything that good for you, but good luck, buddy. I hope we can. And he'd say things like that. And you know, we were so horrified by the whole process. He just wasn't taken care of. And you're trying to do really important work every day with this implosion happening inside your head. So to Vanderbilt, when I met with them, I said, I think this needs to be mandated, that you have to go to counseling and talk to someone if you're named in a lawsuit, not a pamphlet that suggests you should go, but actually maybe you're fined if you don't go. It's got to be a rule. And you've got to have a team of colleagues to talk to. And they said that would have to be something that we had made into law. We can't just do that. But the little hospital where he practiced has done that. They have put together a really cool program of help when this happens. And beyond a lawsuit, the stress y'all are going through right now with COVID and just your daily stress of being a physician, you need to be taking really good care of yourself. You are.
So let me talk to you a little bit more about the mental health process of what was going on with Bill with all of this that I want you to try to think about. So as Edie said, chief resident, Vanderbilt, chief of staff at the hospital, right? When he, would come in early, round, just, you know, superstar in all aspects of the game. So what happens when you get to be Bill's age and you've never failed before? And you don't have that muscle to flex, and you don't think, oh, well, this is a setback or this is a failure and I'll bounce back from it. What happens if you don't know that that's the case? And so thinking about one of the things Edie and I used to smile about is that he had a saying, to make sure I get this right. So Bill said, Edie, there's nothing in life that I've been able to not fix by either learning more, working harder, or being kinder. So that's fixed every problem I've ever had in my life, and it doesn't work in this situation. So what happens when you don't have the tools? And I think that was the big problem, is he was trying to get the tools. He was trying to reach out to mental health. He was trying to do what he needed to do, and it wasn't set up for him appropriately. And that's a whole nother talk about our mental health system. And I could bring my soapbox in here and we could do another grand rounds on that. But, you know, like I said, the good thing is that's better now. But so I want you to think about, you know, yourself and in that situation and that drive that you have to be successful. And he said, you know, ironically, there was a newspaper article about somebody else that was named in a lawsuit, and it was on the front page of the paper. And he said, Edie, I'm going to be one of those doctors now. I've had a malpractice lawsuit, and people aren't going to know that it was bogus. People aren't going to know that what happened, that I didn't do anything wrong. They're just going to see, oh, you're one of those doctors that have been named in a malpractice lawsuit. So suddenly, after being who he was for so long, now he's one of those. And, you know, when you fill out applications to hospitals, or have you ever been named in a malpractice lawsuit? Please explain in this narrative. So for the rest of his life, you get to check that box and explain why you didn't do anything wrong.
And I don't know if any of you are students of the Enneagram, the personality, but he was a 1, which is the perfectionist. And yeah.
That's Bill.
Very, very happy. As a 1, admitting that you, and a lot of physicians are 1s, that you aren't the best at what you do is the lowest point, and you go to a really unhealthy phase of that. And the other thing I was going to say, when he checked into the psychiatric hospital, even on his worst day, he was checking himself in. He was head and shoulders above everyone else that was checked into that hospital. So the residents there just said, you can go home. Just go home and watch a football game or work in the garden. You'll be fine. And I was standing behind him going, good. He's not good. And they said, no, he's good. Because compared to everyone else, he was really great. But he was hanging on by a thread. So that's the other problem. You all live at such a high standard of excellence compared to someone else maybe falling apart. You don't seem like you are. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
within the psychiatric.
Right. So I want to share with you too, Edie mentioned that I've changed the way that I think about suicide, especially for high functioning individuals. And, you know, the literature is now showing us, and the field of suicidality, we're looking at it in a different way. So this was very timely in lots of ways, is that, you know, when I was trained early on, suicide was the endpoint for chronic depression. You know, you got depressed, you got more depressed, you got more depressed, and finally you're so hopeless you kill yourself. And that can be the case for some people. But what we also know now is that for many people, suicide is really not a symptom of mental illness. Suicide can be a symptom of extreme stress. So look at this dude right here. He never had a depressed day in his life. That is not a depressed man. He was never depressed. But what happened was Bill got into a situation where he felt like there's no way out of this situation. I can't be the person that I wanted to be. I won't be respected by my colleagues anymore. My family is going to be embarrassed. They'll be better off if I was just gone rather than having to face this ridicule and be less than what I want to be. So for individuals who are sleep deprived, the brain's not working right, you know, suicide becomes a solution to a way to escape the pain, a way to escape the feelings of being so overwhelmed. And logically, they convince themselves this is the better alternative. And that's not depression, right? That's stress. That's brain not functioning and not being able to look forward and say, there's a better way out of this. So as we continue to look at that, that's why I think it's so important that you all recognize for yourself, but also for other people and also for your patients, that it's this constellation of stressors that are going on with people, the no sleep, the feeling overwhelmed, the lack of support, danger, danger, danger for them. And obviously that's what we saw with Bill.
And when I didn't, you know, when I was asking him, leave medicine, and he said, I don't know what you're talking about. I thought, do I have anything in my life that would break me if someone told me I had done it poorly? And I thought, oh, okay, if I were sued for being a bad mother, if my children came at me and I went, okay, yeah. The thing that you work so hard at every day to be the best at, if you were told you didn't work hard enough and you didn't do your best and you did something wrong, and now we're going to punish you with a lawsuit. Okay. And then I could put it in perspective better. But when Steve opened up with what's the most humiliating, awful low point of your career, and when you think of that, you probably get a little bit of a pit in your stomach if somebody says, now stand up and share. You don't want to share that. You don't want anyone to know about it. But that was also what this lawsuit was saying. We were in a small town, and he was about to be deposed, and it was about to be headlined for the next however many weeks or months. And he said, all is gone. Career's over. At his funeral, a line of physicians came through to me and said, oh, I've thought about killing myself, and I've wanted to, I just couldn't do it. But I've been exactly where he was. And I thought, oh man, I wish he had known that, because he thought he was the only one being broken by the lawsuit. So all of this is just about getting in there and letting people know the stigma of failure with physicians is paralyzing for me to think about what you go through with that. It's almost as though it's not an option for you to miss something or make a mistake. So I don't know that that standard's ever going to change, but the standard of how you take care of yourself, and it's got to be more comfortable. Maybe it is with you, but where you can say to your coworkers, I'm really worried about this, or I say the word, I think I really screwed up. and be safe in saying that. Those are not words that I think physicians come by comfortably, but it's exercising that failure muscle that you really need to make sure you exercise.
Which again is not contradictory to striving for excellence and superior patient care. It's part of it.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's it for our slides, but we might turn the lights on now and see what kind of questions. Yeah. See what kind of questions you have or any discussion that you want or anything you want to know more about.
Or have y'all thought about putting any sort of a exchange or group in place? Or can you think of any ways that within your department it would work to have, if someone is named in a lawsuit, or if someone's just kind of coming undone, that you could put together 3 or 4 or 5 safe colleagues that you could talk to in confidentiality? Or does that just seem horrifying to admit any weakness to appear? Get it? Yeah.
So there's a lot of like online forums and different subspecialties. I think if I was having a serious problem, like I personally wouldn't feel comfortable talking to anyone in my department, because I feel like departments are just places where people talk all the time about everything.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Like, and it's just like gossip.
Yeah.
And somehow it gets mixed in with like everything. I don't know if that's true. It's just my impression of the workplace.
It's such competition. It
even
has been for years for you all.
I don't know if it's competition amongst people. I think it's just office place politics. Like, even though it's medicine, you have like different levels and tiers of people in an office, and people tend to start talking. And I mean, hopefully if you told something in confidence to a colleague, they wouldn't say it to somebody, but I think you never know. I think people feel safer sometimes distanced from their, you know, immediate workplace. And so I know that I participate on a retina forum, and the people there, we have sort of different subgroups, and there are some people that talked about physician suicide and other people that they knew who had committed suicide, and they, you know, there are people who came forward and said, this is my phone number if anyone ever needs to talk. I don't care what time of night it is or day. I mean, we've all kind of exchanged that and offered it to one another. And I know that when I've had some difficulties or hard times, I've reached out to some of the people in the forum that I've bonded with over the last 2 years.
I think the bonded with is important, and I'm not dissing, you're a counselor and you're really good at what you do. But that checking in with a counselor once a week or once a month, where they're trying to catch up and remember who you are and what you've got going on. I think bonding with someone, I'd even talked to Steve about the medical school in Louisville, if there could be an exchange program between these 2 medical centers where you could talk, maybe feel safer talking to someone there. Nothing can, Zoom is great, but sitting across the table and sharing a meal with someone and having a cup of coffee and really having a real back and forth is so important. Different level, and we are drifting further and further away from that, but it is human connection that is needed.
I also think that the way medical school is going at admissions, I think more and more people are probably not the Enneagram 1. Like I know I don't know what Enneagram I am. I'm taking it right now, but I'm farthest thing from one possible. Like,
Okay, that's a tough one.
I don't know. I'm something
hard on themselves.
But there's a lot of people who've never had failure, but the more and more non-traditional students who are coming into medicine, the more people have had different experiences of failure, right? Like,
right.
And so, yes, like I personally felt very lonely going into medicine when I was surrounded by people who motivated themselves off of fear of failure. Now, if you failed at something or you didn't do well and you had to do a special master's program or take a year off or whatever you did, then you're going to destroy yourself by motivating yourself with fear of failure, because you're constantly going to be reminded of times where you were low. So it's not going to be like a productive upward trajectory. So
Yeah.
I think people now in medicine tend to find their like-minded. I don't know. I think there's
I
more
hope so.
discussion because
I know in the last 7 years, I've seen huge changes. Even Bill called the suicide hotline, and they, you know, now you can call and they'll actually make a move. Then they said, have you made an attempt on your life? No. Oh yeah, you don't call us then yet until you've done that. So things have changed a lot. Thank goodness. I will say something else that attorney, he's the only one out of this whole thing I just can't bear to. I can't stand him. He was such a jerk, but he told Bill he couldn't talk to his pastor or his personal attorney, and that is not true. You always can talk to your own attorney about a lawsuit like this and your pastor. Really important information that
Probably a therapist too. We have confidentiality. That's
we just he couldn't
get one. Yeah.
So
are you able to elaborate at all on this peer network and the legality surrounding it? Because I maybe a little bit, my understanding is you still cannot share outside of spouse and pastor and lawyer. Is that true?
Well, what our hospital in Columbia did, they allow you to choose other physicians, probably not in your department, who in no way would be absolutely no legal doctor. And they are your peer group to talk to.
But that's a really good question, and probably we need to check with like Margaret Pisicano and Risk Management General Counsel for UK, because I think I'm not a legal person at all, but I think the thinking about that is if you share that with a colleague, what's going on, they can be deposed as well with it. And so UK is going to say, no, we don't want anybody else coming into this.
Definitely could not with this part.
I have not been sued personally yet, although I know my time is coming, but I had several colleagues that have, and it's simply just a sharing, hey, this is going on, and one of them, we went out for drinks, and there's only so much, it ends very abruptly at them wanting to share what's actually happening and not being able to.
Right.
That's really hard.
So yeah, I think what you can do then is if you have a colleague that is being in a lawsuit, even though they can't talk about the case, check in with them, take them out, make sure they're okay. Go to dinner with them, have coffee with them, go get a drink, do something to make sure that you're checking on them, because it's beyond stressful.
Ask what is the worst part of this week? What's been the worst of this week? Mm-hmm. How are you taking care of yourself? Are you seeing a counselor? Yeah. It takes work, and I know you're all busy. You need to add on and say, help take care of your peers. There's just one more thing to add on, but oh my gosh, it's just maybe the most important thing.
What else? Other questions?
Heavy at 8 in the morning.
Yeah, is everybody okay with all this? I'm sorry. Right. Let me say this too, that if this today has really stirred something in you, I'm happy to talk to you. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'm on the UK email. I'm sjohn5 at UK. And Edie's given her card as well.
I brought my cards, and that's weird. I said, is this weird for me to bring a card? Obviously, my what I did after this all happened, I became a mediator because I thought, Bill kept saying, if this patient would just get in a room and talk to me. And so I've never practiced mediation. I just wanted to know that I could do it. But I can talk to you about what the whole process looked like, the weird things that come at you that no one tells you about. Most bizarre, 2 days after his funeral, the jerk lawyer called and said, oh, hey, she's naming you and your estate now in the lawsuit. So it's just picked back right up. It's you now. And I went, what? And he said, yeah, so see ya. And so I don't think my husband ever imagined that I would then be named in the office. So that happened. But I'll put the cards up here. I kept an extraordinary secret for 7 months from every human in my life. I know how to be very quiet and listen. And I'm far, far away in Spotty Daisy, Tennessee, where there are no people. So if you just middle of nowhere, sort of a witness protection program. But if you need to talk, I'm more than happy. You can email or call, because you'll be winded and undeserving, very possibly. I think undeserving no matter what lawsuits. The irony, when I went to Vanderbilt, they said, are you going to file a lawsuit? And I went, oh my gosh, that's what got this whole thing. No, I'm so anti-lawsuit. No, we're just going to talk about it. So I really appreciate everything y'all do. I hold you in the highest esteem.
So I don't know if you guys have to do like a quality improvement program. Our residents have to do that. And this would be a great one to do, to think about how to be supportive, to flex that failure muscle so that there's a little more maybe acceptance of that, some supports in place, that kind of thing. However would work good for the program, the training program, or the department. So. What else? Anything else we can tell you?
If you don't do the Enneagram, that's a great way to sort of get a read on yourself. It shows you what you slip into when you start getting really unhealthy and stressed out, so you can put the brakes on. So I highly recommend.
How do you spell that? E-N-N-E?
A-G-R-A-M. You can take a test online and just start a little light study of it. And it helps you get along with patients and people in your department. And it's really great for getting along with your spouse and children. Okay.
Thanks so much for your time. We've enjoyed being here with you.